Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on old business, the fuel policy, are you gonna?
Yeah, if I just, this is something we handed out at the last meeting. There was no way y'all had time to adequately look at it. So put it back in there. It really didn't change except for one item during the discussion last month about the prepay policy. And just by way of background, the former board established a very successful prepay policy. As you've seen from the other figures we've given you, it really has increased the level of fuel sales. But unfortunately, one of the things that policy provided for was that if prices escalated dramatically in a short period of time, the airport authority could actually be in a negative cash flow position for those prepaid customers, relative to those prepaid customers. And I don't think that was certainly the intent of the airport board, and but we had to kind of watch out for that. Now, we've been very successful, we've been very lucky, not successful, lucky in the first 6 months that the price of fuel up until recently has been actually dropping. And so the margins have been good, and even though we have our fuel very competitively priced, they're recently starting to go back up. What this would provide for is, rather than, we originally proposed a rebate program, where people would pay the regular price and then get a rebate after 6 months. Several of the aircraft owners that operate charter and things like that, that doesn't work with their business model. And so they came back to us and said, could we do something different? And we began talking about a flowage idea that's not uncommon. This is where you prepay for a certain amount, and then what happens whenever you buy fuel, we simply take the amount off, and it's an amount based upon the flowage rate. And what we're proposing is that if you prepay between 25, this is only for Jet A fuel, because we don't do prepay for 100 low lead presently, we're not proposing to do that here. It would be for $2,500 to $74.99. You would get the current cost plus 40 cents in taxes. And the current cost would be equal to the price of the fuel delivered plus a 20% operation, 20 cent operation charge, not 20%, 20 cent operation charge. And for prepayments, $7,500 and over, the amount would be the current cost plus 15 cents. And then, of course, the taxes are added on to that. So those who purchase large volumes will get a substantial discount when they prepay. Downside of this is that, as Chris was noting in his report, and as Mr. Abernathy was noting, the numbers go up and down each month. They're less flat in terms of the amount sold, because you might have $10,000 sold one month and nothing for the next 3 months while they're using it down. But it's recorded the month it's received, so it causes variations like that. But on the other hand, it really provides a solid benefit that's commonly offered to heavy users in other airports. So the comments I received have been favorable. They understand why the board is shifting from what it's doing now, because no one wants, the pilots I've talked to, they're not interested in seeing the airport take a loss, but they also want to see the benefits. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we'd like to have this go into effect January 1.
So you need a motion on the fuel policy as you.
Right, what we would do is take this policy and we would convert it into actual policy, language implemented January 1.
Hear a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll start one.
Yes, sir.
One of the discussions you had at your last meeting was whether or not it should only apply to planes or aircraft based at the airport. Our feeling was that it should. There was a discussion among the board that, wait a minute, if we're trying to attract aircraft to utilize the facility more, we should make it available to anybody, whether they're resident or transient. Based upon that discussion, you'll note that we X'd out that line that it only applies to resident aircraft. It would be also available to transient aircraft. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
We have a motion on accepting this fuel policy that Mr. Classen has outlined, and I think you got information earlier on it.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion and second. Any discussion on it? Any questions for Mr. Classen at this point in time? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting this fuel policy that Mr. Classen has presented, signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Okay, last item on here is, Mr. Richard, you have some comments to make on some documents and stuff?
more than just comments. I'm gonna recommend to the board that we have a report from the sheriff's department on the missing 11 years of minutes. Also, in the 11 years of minutes, with the closed session minutes, for the other years that I've scanned through with the minutes, they are missing closed session minutes. I've asked the clerk. No one can identify where they're at. These minutes would also include agreements and documents of other nature. And I think it's our responsibility and duty to do everything we can to achieve these minutes, documents, records of any kind. To have them scanned, if they are found, and to put them in the proper place. You want me to do the audit while I'm doing this?
Yeah.
What I just said is even more reason to do an audit. We need to know what, where, when, and why before we move forward. And when I say audit, I mean it all. Financial, planes at the airport and all.
Questions for Mr. Richard?
The financial part of it, there is a yearly audit, correct, with the airport or not?
Yeah, but the impression, in the discussions I've had with Commissioner Richard, this is more of a comprehensive organizational audit, if you will, if I understand. We can go back and get the audit, the financial audits, but this is beyond that. Is that correct? Or maybe I
Yes,
misunderstood.
I would like to have an in-depth audit done on each and every aspect of the airport. The audit that you're talking about, I'm assuming, Carl, would be the general audit that we will receive as Board of Commissioners in January, and it's more or less just a service audit.
But that's the financial audit, that's the financial audit that the numbers you've received for us on an interim basis are generally correct in accordance with financial accounting standards. What you've spoken with me about is what are things, whether it's minutes, agreements, and just general operations. It's more of I would call it, for lack of a better term, an organizational audit. If it's, so it goes,
The entire,
Is that correct?
What do you call it, the department, the entire department audit,
yeah.
every aspect of it.
Well, I know I had down, looking ahead to the next meeting, I've talked to several people. I would like to have, our building inspector inspect the hangars, someone with the tax office, make sure what's in the hangars is what's supposed to be there. And that, taxes are being paid on what's being stored in the hangars. I would assume that dovetails.
That's part of why I'm requesting.
But what else?
But that's a different, I'm gonna ask you to split those two issues, because I think what you're looking at is going back to the 1980s, correct, Commissioner Richard?
On the minutes, but I'm also asking that we do an audit on the whole thing up there. Meaning, what's in the hangars? Are we getting the proper tax amount? Even including the lease agreements, per the rules and regulations.
I think the attorney's working on the lease agreements if there's any changes. Is that not right, Mr. Classen?
Yeah, well, what she was doing at your request was taking a look at all the existing leases, kind of where are they, but we also know there's at least 2 leases where there's commercial operations going on, and then we also have a commercial operation on the property, which is the restaurant, for which there's a question about what that lease should or shouldn't entail, and things of that nature. And so she's really getting into that commercial side of it, because I think she feels it's more, I think she feels that the ground leases you currently have are, are generally in good shape. The question, but the other ones still need to be resolved. Those issues need to be resolved. And she was working on that. But I'm still hearing this goes beyond that, because we're also talking about, and the timing's right, in terms of determining what is being maintained inside the hangars in terms of reporting for taxable purposes. Because of course we have a lien date coming up for real estate, and then we have a listing coming up in January, February, listing period for personal property. And we can certainly work with the hangar owners between now and then, along with the revenue department, to make sure we're getting that. As to the ability to go in and inspect, I think we'll have to look at what our ground leases hold. There are certain rules and regulations that this board has, plus there are conditions of those leases. But we have to figure out what exactly is authorized in both those cases. And, we can certainly take a look at that. What Commissioner Richards talking about, those going beyond that, is kind of taking a look at the whole organization of the airport and doing more of a, I understand what you mean by an audit, and I'm trying to, I think I understand what you're looking for, and we can try and have a more in-depth proposal for you for your January meeting of what we can do. I keep going back to organizational. How do we do what we do up there? And where is everything? Fixed asset inventories, everything else.
Part of this I would ask that we address tonight, because as you stated, situs as of January 1. So we need to look inside the hangars, we need to see what's there on that date.
Yeah, we have, and I didn't understand what you were fully looking for, otherwise I would have had the folks from the revenue department here, because they can tell you what their authority is in that regard.
I believe the lease agreements with the hangars gives this board the right to inspect and examine as well.
And I can't speak that off the top of my head. Beth would have been able to do that. She just wasn't available tonight. Let me look at it. I'm not disagreeing. I understand. I think I have a good idea of what you're looking for, and we'll try and make that happen. It sounds like what you're trying to do tonight is to direct staff. It sounds like a motion, because I'm trying to frame it such we'll get it started so that we have direction of what the board might want to do, is to direct the board, is to direct the staff to, for the purposes of taxation and compliance, to take such actions as are necessary to obtain the highest level. You're not telling us to go beyond what the law or what the leases allow, but you want us to make sure that we go there and find out, so that you all have a comfort level. Is that kind of where I'm hearing that?
I would love to be able to see that done. However, if it goes beyond what the lease agreement says we can do, I'm sure that we could get that done by whatever means is necessary.
Well, we have
We
statutory
need to be
authority.
sure that we have, what we have up there, that we have control of it. And that goes for the minutes, the documents as well.
Right.
Simply because what the future holds is unknown. We need to know. First of all, it would target problem areas. If we have problems with birth, whatever they may be, we could discover that. Are we losing taxation? Money's through taxation revenues. Or we've got a lot of equipment up there in these shops. Or is that equipment being taxed?
Is it properly being listed?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Listed and taxed.
Well, and as well as, is the equipment, is things being stored, the proper things to be stored, or are we
That's
assuming a liability in some cases?
On that one,
for things being stored?
we started last year, the year before. I know the building code people came to me and said, "What do you want us to do?" And I said, "Fire inspections. If that's what the statute calls for, do them." And they began doing them last year. So they do the fire inspections on a regular basis now. It was held by a prior chief inspector that fire inspections were not appropriate. And our current inspector has talked to the Department of Insurance and clarified that they must be done. And he conducted them last year and possibly the year before. I can't remember. I lost track of whether it began at 11 or 12. I'm thinking it may have been at 11. And that was, there was a lot of controversy because the question was the airport conducting inspections of the hangars that they weren't authorized to do? That was not our issue at that time. Our issue then was just that we had to conduct the fire inspections. And he asked me, and I said, "This is what the law provides for. This is your job. Yes, it's a change. Yes, please work with people to get them into compliance. But you're going to have to go out and do it." And they did. And I give the inspections department the credit for doing that.
the opposite side of doing this would be, if there's a problem up there, George or anyone up there has a problem that we're unaware of, maybe we'll find that out as well. So it's got a good and a bad side to it.
Yeah, no question, but every time you look at something closely, you always find issues that need addressing. You should take a walk around your own house. And so I guess I'm looking at this the same way. So let's take a look around the airport, but let's do it in a methodical way and get a report back to you all. But I'm not sure how far we can go. We'll take it. We'll I guess why that motion at the beginning, I'm not sure, is to direct staff to begin the process to the extent authorized by the leases and under state law. And the first thing we look at is the issue of tax, real estate and personal property taxation, but also work with the attorney to determine, where we are with the leases and what the what the responsibilities of the airport board are in enforcing the provisions of those leases.
As well
Is
as the
that-
missing